going to try an onside kick on the opening kickoff. Looks as if the hands team will be able to recover the ball. The Nittany Lions offense takes the field. And here he is. Let me tell you about this wide receiver. He is a route-running, DB, toasting, pass-catching, touchdown-scoring, woo, son of a gun.
I can't wait to see how this defense is going to try and corral this guy, because you play man-to-man, you risk him running right by you and catching the deep ball, but you play zone and you give him the opportunity to potentially make yards after the catch. You're going to have to be really careful trying to cover that dude.
They're going to open this drive with a pass. Pulls it in. It's Singleton. And that play just never got started as he's run out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage.
That's one I think if the running back could have over, he would just let that ball sail out of bounds incomplete, because he made the catch but lost yards because of it. It wasn't an accurate throw. He'll know next time to just let that ball go.
He can't make the connection. It'll be incomplete. He can scramble but couldn't create anything there.
You know, it's difficult for QBs sometimes when you're throwing to your running backs because they're not receivers. You really got to be perfect with the ball placement. You got to make that a catchable throw. A little bit too tough for the RB on that.
Zings it complete to the right. Really nice job there by both guys, the throw and the catch, to work that defense and get the first down.
There's a reason third down is called the money back. What a great find by the quarterback. Great job finding his receiver. At the end of the game, you look at third down percentages, it tells a huge story, and it goes a long way in deciding who wins a football game.
The Nittany Lions will snap it on 1st and 10. Quarterback now on the run, still looking. They'll force him out of bounds after a solid pickup on the play.
And I think this is important for this defense. This will be a big key in the football game. Like, I got to limit the damage from that guy, because that's a QB that's dynamic, and he can make so many big plays. I got to string him out. I got to make him get to the sideline. But I will say this. I do want to hit him at the end of the runs. I don't want to let him out of bounds and let him get free carries. I want it to be physical.
That just never had a chance as they controlled the middle of the field and stopped him in the backfield on 3rd down. On 4th down, looking for the completion. Finds him out of the backfield. And they knock him down, but he got past the line to gain. Fans are bringing the noise on 1st and goal. They'll try to get it in with the run. Forges ahead for 1 to the 8-yard line. These fans raising the volume on 2nd and goal. To the air, it's Aller. He caught it. That completion has them right on the doorstep. They'll mark it at the 1. So loud it's rattling your fillings on 3rd and goal. Trying to power it in. They were all over him. Nowhere to go as that 3rd down play turned into a disaster.
All right, decision time early. I'm just going field goal here. Put some points on the board and pay off this nice opening.
And I get that, but I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going for the touchdown. Even if I get stopped, they got to go almost the whole length of the field. I'm starting the game aggressive.
And it looks as if they're going to try a field goal. Right down the boulevard. It's good. And with that, they break the seal on the scoring. It's 3-0.
I know one thing this head coach does every week is he challenges his guys to start fast. And it's so important today, playing on the road in this kind of environment. You saw a nice drive. They didn't get the touchdown they would have loved, but still, kicking that field goal and taking this early lead, that's a statement for the visiting team.
And it's caught from inside the 20, and here he comes. So Arkansas. its first opportunity of the day. One way to mitigate the explosive capabilities he has on the outside is be physical with him, and this dude will do that.
He will do that, and you don't see a lot of offenses take the top off this D because of this guy roaming around in the middle of the field. He is a true center fielder, so this receiver's going to have to make plays.
Just does such a great job of getting guys on the ground. A lot of people are in position, but he makes plays, so him versus a dynamic wide receiver on the outside will be a great matchup.
Kept it on the ground last time, bringing up a second down. Wide receiver coming across in motion. To the air, it's Green. Slides away, and the defense is there. He got away for a second, but not for long as they knock him down for a loss. On third and long, he'll need to loosen up that arm. He took a hit as he threw it and couldn't deliver the football. It's incomplete, and fourth down's coming. Quarterback checking off. On fourth down, looking to pass. Time to take a shot. And he reels it in inside the 30. Not much of a fourth down gamble when it's that much of a sure thing. An easy conversion for this offense. Wide receiver shows motion. Comes out throwing on first down. They're trying to get to it. He's got it in the end zone! Touchdown, Arkansas!
One of the areas they really focused on with this receiver in the offseason was we need you to make more plays for us in the end zone.
A little trickery and they flip it ahead. He's not going to make it stop short of the goal line, and they are unable to extend this lead any further. You don't see this very often, an early onside kick when you have the lead. Not much drive. That's a live ball. The Hogs send that offense back onto the field. Man, what a drive last time for the touchdown. That passing attack was lethal, David.
Yeah, you hear all these stupid commentators like me and Jesse talking about create balance, run and pass. No, when you throw that good, spin the ball around.
So the defense has to find a way to affect the quarterback on this drive because last drive he had way too much time to throw.
Looking to throw, it's Green. Oh, he's ready to take a shot. And it falls incomplete, but that could have been disastrous. A defender was right there.
Smart offensive coordinators, they're going to throw deep balls, especially those 50-50 balls you hear about all the time. My wide receiver is better than your DB. Well, not on this play.
Third down conversions are a huge stat, and this one would be a doozy if they can pull it off. Touch pass on the jet sweep. Just buried it. And after the tackle, that will bring us to the end of the first quarter.
At the 46-yard line, offense facing fourth down.
That's the end of the quarter, and Arkansas has the lead. We've put one in the books. Let's have a look at our game summary. They've swapped ends of the field, and we're ready to go in the second. They're a couple of yards short of the first down, but the offense will stay out there on fourth down. He'll try to throw and pick up the first down. And they gambled in their own end, and now they give up really good field position. The Nittany Lions going back to work on offense now. Line gets set, first down. Looking to move it through the air. Moves around to clear up the vision. He'll get rid of it. Got his man. And he was loose and in the open field and on his way. A tremendous pickup on them. From the 22 on 1st and 10. He's going to pass. Catch in the middle. It's Fleming.
Nice patience by the quarterback here, working against zone coverage. He was allowing his receiver an opportunity to find that open space in the defense before pulling the trigger.
He steps out of bounds, but not before he has enough to set him up 1st and goal. The Nittany Lions want to move quickly. Turning to the running game on 1st and goal. And he'll race it to the house. Touchdown, Nittany Lions!
And this running back is so dangerous down close to the end zone. He's got wiggle, he's got great vision and burst, and he showed all of those attributes right there.
It's a fake. Holder looking to throw. Intercepted. And a bit of a bizarre play there, but no opportunity to run it back for the 2, so the score will stay the same. This is ultra-aggressive. Still in the first half, got the lead and going for the onside kick. They'd hoped to get that thing bouncing around, but the hands team is able to corral it.
We're only in the first half, and I don't think anybody had onside kick in the second quarter on their bingo card. They were trying to catch the opponent off guard, but it didn't work. Now let's find out what this offense can do. You've got to make them pay for gambling.
Looking downfield, it's Green. Pressure coming. The junior quarterback frustrated with himself after throwing it behind his man.
There's an example of what happens when the quarterback doesn't have a chance to set his feet. The pressure just forced him to have to work off schedule a little bit. And I think because of that, he wasn't able to be as accurate as he wanted to be.
And the last thing they need is to squander this great field position facing a 3rd and long. From the gun, wants to pass. Using his legs, keeping his eyes downfield. Looking down the left side. And swatted down by the defense to stop the scoring opportunity. They've already gone for it a couple of times on 4th down, converted once. Looks as if they'll try a 3rd. He'll try to throw and pick up the 1st down. Makes the grab well past the sticks. And they finally make the tackle, but this will be a pretty easy conversion for this offense. He'll pull it on the read. Nowhere to run on that one. He loses 4 on the carry. Defense rose up deep in its own end on that last play. Now a 2nd and long coming. Wants to throw. It's Green. He's got it. He gets it in. Touchdown, Razorbacks.
Defense has to be better on the back end. They knew this offense was going to come out, and they were going to challenge them. They were going to try to push the ball vertically down.
The fake, and he wants to throw. He makes the catch in the end zone, and that trickery works to perfection for the 2. They already have the lead, and they apparently want more here in the first half, going for the onside kick. Few anxious moments there, but the hands team true to its name as they make the grab and get the ball. Penn State sends the offense back onto the field. That last drive really productive. David wound up with a touchdown. They'll try to do it again.
Yeah, so I don't expect this offense to change too much, Reese. They had a great drive. They got the touchdown. Everything working. I would expect them to keep it.
And they couldn't hold off the heat, and he goes down with the sack. The clock has reached the 2-minute mark, and they have a chance to at least cut into this lead before the break. That offense having to deal with the last thing you want on first down, giving up a sack as they come up to the line on second down. Trying to get to it. Buys a little time. And with not much doing downfield, he found his parents open in the stands and threw it to them.
And how nice is it to have the home crowd going absolutely bananas? Communication is harder. The snapping the football, everybody being on time. Man, this crowd really affecting the football game.
On 3rd and long, he's going to have to turn one loose downfield. He's got it. And sure, tackling there to keep him from getting to the first down marker. A field goal try would have been a 51-yarder. They'll opt instead to try to move the chains on 4th down. He'll try to throw and pick up the first down. Unloaded just as he throws. It's incomplete, and they stop him on 4th down. And Arkansas ready to send out this offense. This drive will get underway from just inside the 35 at their own 34. Coming out on first down with the play fake. Throws to the wideout. Got a wide open receiver. Finally run out of bounds, but he has this offense rolling with a first down. Dropping back, it's Green. Coming after it. Takes a hit as he fires. Picked off. And they'll close in on him after a good return on the interception.
What a great...
First and 10.
But how about this? Quarterbacks like a smooth pocket where they can step up, set their feet. That defense did not give him that. Hit him while he's throwing the football, made it easy for the defender to run underneath it, create an interception.
The Nittany Lions going back to work on offense now. That last drive was promising at times, but stalled out, and they turned it over on downs, Jesse.
I think they got to do a better job here, just being better early in the downs. On first down, finding positive.
Yeah, and it's frustrating when you move the football and get stopped on the other side of the field and get no points. But they've had some success, and I like the aggressiveness. They just got to cash some of these drives in.
Caught in the backfield, it's Allen. Well, he comes up with the reception, but not a lot of room to run after that.
Yeah, and I like the QB doing this. I mean, I'm going to find ways to give him the football and see if he can make a miss. And I'm going to bet most of the time that my guy is a little bit more athletic than that defensive.
And that pass is intercepted. Bringing it back. And he's wrapped up after a solid return on the pick.
And this ball looks like it just got away from the quarterback. I think he made the right decision. He was going to the receiver that seemed open, but just not very accurate on the throw, and that leads to the interception.
Off the play fake on first down to throw. He's going to let one fly down the middle. Throw to the end zone. It's picked off. And the offense makes the tackle in frustration after the interception. Drive comes up empty, and it's a turnover.
Man, this thing's starting to snowball now in a bad way for this offense. Second interception in as many drives. This quarterback has got to be able to turn the page and make better decisions.
Lofts one high and deep. Oh, and it's a pick. He threw it right into the double coverage. And a big return after the INT sets up the offense for this possession.
Nice read, nice break. Good job by the defender understanding that ball had some air underneath it. Takes advantage of it, goes and makes the big play.
The Hogs send that offense back onto the field. Well, let's see if this drive goes better than the last one. They were in and out quickly after the quick pick, David.
Yeah, first play, big mistake, man. Now, let's get this offense in a little bit of...
Fires toward the end zone. And this is dropped. Incomplete pass. He had a huge gain in his fingers, and he couldn't hold on.
Well, the game plan's been pretty simple offensively, right? They are taking shots, and they're being aggressive, throwing it down the field. This guy's already got 2 touchdown passes. We're still in the first half. And on that last one, he was looking for number 3.
This offense has a second down play. Quarterback changing the plays at the line. The play action fake. He's not afraid to go deep. And he makes the grab but can't get the foot down in the field of play. Almost had 6 there.
This defense is going to have to make some adjustments here at halftime because they have been taken advantage of deep down the field in the passing game. They've already given up 2 TD passes. That was almost number 3, and we're only in the first half.
It's caught. Timeout called by the offense, and now they just have 1 remaining in the half.
It's all about critical downs and distances on defense. You want to be great unit defensively, you've got to be good on third down and in the red zone. And for this defense giving up a third down like that, that is just a gut punch.
Getting some heat. Takes a shot as he lets it go. To the end zone, and it's picked off. And they make the play to stop the scoring opportunity just before the end of the half. Running out of time here in the first half. They're going to have to be efficient to put some points on the board before the break. Looking for a man. It's Allard. Looking deep down the right side. The pass is incomplete, and 1 second is left.
Oh, man. Quarterback almost just threw his second interception on as many drives. He's trying to fit that football in there. It gets tipped up in the air. He's lucky that wasn't picked up.
He's going for it all. And he is finding wide-open defenders all over the field. His 3rd interception of the day. And he'll be brought down, and that's how we'll end the first half. We played 2 quarters here. Time to go to Kevin Connors in our halftime update.
Thanks, guys. A first half that saw a little bit of everything there in Fayetteville. And I get it. A lot of coaches will say the difference between winning and losing comes down to stopping big plays and getting big plays. But if you ask me, it's more about how good you are on third down and how efficient you are in keeping drives alive. Those 2 stats can help you break the will of even the best defenses and help you come out on top.
Oh, look at Mr. Hands taking the squibber inside the 30. And Arkansas ready to send out this offense. They got plenty done through the air in the first half, and we'll see if they even need to look for balance as we start the third quarter.
Well, and I think defensively, you understand, like the running game isn't a big part of the plan. I wonder how they adjust and play.
He's going to throw deep right side. And it is another interception. Just a terrible struggle for this quarterback. And they capitalize not only on the pick, but the great return to give the offense tremendous field position.
Who says defensive backs don't have hands? Nice job breaking on the football and making the catch. A lot of times you see guys swat it down or you see them trying to catch it. It looks like they have 2 left hands. Defensive backs don't catch real well. Nice job breaking on the football. Nice job securing the INT and actually catching it.
Off play action on first down. Grabbed behind the line. It's Singleton. And a good job of coverage by that defense, just a short pickup.
Well, it's important in this game, this offense gets the running back involved. They're out on the perimeter in space where you can do some damage. That time they got it to him throwing the football. Picked up a couple of yards, but it gives the defense something to think about.
Get it out on the screen. He almost picked up the first down on that one, but he'll be just a little bit short. The Nittany Lions in the hurry-up. He's going to look for a man on 3rd and short. Fires on the move. How about getting the foot down on that throw for the big completion? And they just want to give this guy a chance to make a play on 3rd down, and more times than not, he is going to deliver.
And he's so good, so efficient, such a good route runner, got the speed, got the complete game, so you definitely want to highlight him, and especially on those.
And it's picked off for the 4th time today. Trying to take it back. Inside the 10. And he's going to take it all the way. Touchdown, Arkansas. The DB saw it. He thought, don't drop it, don't drop it. Then thought, don't get caught, don't get caught. And he did the pick six. They fake it, pitch it to the tight end. And the defense wrestles him to the ground. Now they'll try to get another possession with an onside kick. The offense somehow fell on it, and they'll retain possession. The officials offer the deal, and the coach accepts it. They will take the penalty. 1st down for this offense. Moving the running back, trying to get the D to tip its hand. Quarterback on the move, still looking. He fires it out to the right. Oh, and he gets downfield for the big catch. Defense is there to make the stop, but he's got the 1st down, and they'll have it 1st and goal at the 6. Use the play fake, now to throw. And he is snowed under. Sacked at the 7. Defense rolls up deep in its own end on that last play. Now a 2nd and long coming. Looking to pass. It's Aller. Fires to the end zone. And his 5th interception of the game. A miracle they haven't pulled him yet.
Really nice job there by the defense, because I think they baited the QB and trying to fit that one in over the middle of the field. Remember, it's a big zone coverage. They've all got their eyes on him back there in the pocket, and they just let him feel like, maybe I can fit this football in. Not so fast. They come away with the pick.
Quarterback will audible. He's looking to throw it. Stands in and takes the hit. And that is his 5th interception, a nightmare he is not waking up from. And they'll drag him down after a good return on the interception.
This is Johnny on the spot. Now his 2nd interception of the game, doing a great job reading the quarterback's eyes, and he's just been in the right place at the right time making plays.
They'll throw it on 1st down. Can't find his man as he took a shot trying to deliver that football, and it'll be 2nd down. Quarterback stands alone, all wide receivers. Misfired on 1st down, back to the air on 2nd. And it's another interception as his assault on the record book continues. He couldn't quite get loose on that return, but he'd already made the play, and they've got it at the 35. The Hogs send that offense back onto the field. Well, the good news about this drive, Jesse, it can't go worse than last time through a pick on the 1st play.
No, it certainly can't. I think one good way, David, to help your quarterback turn the page is just find him an easy completion here and let him get back into a rhythm.
Yeah, or find him an easy handoff. Just hand the football off, maybe get the ground game going, maybe jumpstart this offense.
Wants to throw on 1st down off the play fake. Unleashes one deep. And it'll be intercepted in the end zone. He'll try to take it back. That's why you love veterans in this defense. They stay locked in on their rules, and he made the pick.
This guy is so comfortable in zone coverage. They're playing cover 2, and he's just back there roaming around in the middle of the field. He's so confident in his speed to break on the ball. As soon as he saw where the QB was trying to go with it, he put his heel on the ground, accelerated, and made the pick.
You know, as a quarterback, you believe in your matchup. And my running back, if I can get him the ball in space, he's going to win a lot of times. He did in that time. The defense was ready. Nice job in the open field making the nice tackle.
Every journey begins with a step. This offense needs to step into a third down conversion and then try to turn it into some scores, and fast. Got it behind the line. It's Singleton. And he's not going to make it. The defense denying him the first down.
You got to love that. On defense, one of the most critical statistics out there is how do you play on third down? How do you prevent the opponent from keeping drives alive? Right there, tackling the catch. You gave up the completion. Whoop-de-doo. You set up 4th and long. You're going to get the ball.
They got him. It's a sack. And what a stop for this defense to turn it over on down. A first down for the offense. Use the play fake. Now to throw. Blasted as he lets it go. He makes the catch. And they'll finally bring him down after he rips off a huge play. The offense showing motion from the tight end, trying to get a read on the D. He'll come out throwing on first down. Working that left side now. Touchdown, Razorbacks! And they add 6 more to the board with that trip to the house. This dude is just slicing and dicing this defense into little tiny pieces.
Carving him up, completely comfortable, knows exactly what he's getting. Had so much success today. Got to find a way to make these quarterbacks feel more uncomfortable.
They fake it, goes to the tight end. He's going to be stopped short of the goal line. The 2-point attempt is no good as they are unable to extend the lead. After scoring that touchdown, they'll try to get it right back with an onside kick. And a few anxious moments, but the hands team is able to fall on it. Time for one more snap before the end of the quarter. We'll see if this offensive line is ready for the blitz. They'll throw it on first down. And the pass falls incomplete. That's how we'll wrap up the third quarter of play. But now, time for the fourth quarter. That's the end of the quarter, and Arkansas has the lead. This has been utter domination through 3 quarters, and the stats will back that up. Just about ready to go in the fourth, and we'll see if any drama can be mustered. Second down here as they go back to work after the break. After the incompletion, back to the passing game. And it's picked off at the goal line. And after the interception and the turnover, this defense has set its offense up for business.
And as a defensive lineman late in the game, man, when you know it's passion, you're pinning your ears back, trying to get to the quarterback, and DBs are trying to do this. Pad them stats, get the INT. Nice job by this team.
And Arkansas ready to send out this offense. From his end zone, he'll go up top. He hurls one deep down the left side. It's complete. A huge pickup. And they'll do more than move the chains. They'll move that thing more than 30 yards down the field before he's finally stopped. Quarterback checking the play. Off the play fake on first down to throw. He'll take another shot here. Makes the grab. And this defense is a half a beat behind. They just can't quite keep up. They've got it down to the 21.
Well, it really just feels feels like they are trying to make a statement to everybody in college football. They've got a lead, they've got it late, and they are still putting it on this defense. They are still letting it fly. They're airing it out, trying to light up the scoreboard.
Buys a little time, but he can't get away again, and down he goes, and the trickeration is not so tricky.
Oftentimes with play action, you're asking the quarterback to hold on to the ball a bit longer, and you're asking this offensive line to hold up and
fires the pass, intercepted. Never really got that return cranking, but the offense is set up at the 30.
Have a day, young fella. 2 interceptions already? That's 3, 4, 5, 6 games for some people. A hot start, catching the football. He's acting like he's playing wide receiver out there. I might think about trying a different DB.
And he was hit just as he released it, and it falls to the turf.
this offensive line is not going to like watching the film back tomorrow when they get the opportunity, because they have gotten beat time and time again up front, especially in passing.
Setting up the screen, and it's picked off. Going the other way, and he's got room. Touchdown, Arkansas! The defense puts 6 on the board with a big-time interception return.
And that just might do it. Man, offense needed points badly. Defense comes up with a big interception.
Oh, now the kicker's going to throw it. He makes the grab in the end zone. They must have seen something on film as they turn the fake into the 2-point conversion. They'll try to follow that last touchdown with an onside kick. That's why they call them the hands team. They're able to secure the onside kick.
Well, here in the fourth quarter, they were obviously expecting onside kick. They got their hands team on the field. They're able to jump on the ball and make sure they get possession.
The offense set for a first down play. They'll start this drive with a pass. Now he's going to glide away from pressure. He's looking on the right side. He snares it in the end zone. Touchdown, Penn State!
And I think in the pre-snap, I think both of these guys were on the same page. They had a look defensively that let them know we can pitch this thing way down the field. I'm going to go run under it and make a big play.
Yeah, and when I'm the receiver, I'm like, I'm open, right? I'm going straight down the field. Throw me the football. I got the speed. I can beat this guy. You can tell they've done that so much in practice. They knew it was second nature, and they executed it perfectly.
And clang, no good, off the right upright. That drive not too taxing on the playbook. One play, put it in the end zone just like that. Almost ready to kick it away after scoring the touchdown. And that is not the optimal solution there. The kickoff out of bounds, and the offense will have a little bit easier time of things. Looks like a penalty on the kickoff as the ball goes out of bounds. Offense bringing in the big boys, heavy personnel. They'll run the option. Now the toss. And the defense holds firm. No pickup at all on that play. The Razorbacks are in the hurry-up.
And I think this is where coaches really earn their money late in games, right? It's in the fourth quarter. You got the lead. Do you want to stay conservative and run the football?
Just destroying his way through the field. And they'll finally catch up to him, but not before a big chunk of yardage is picked up. All the way down at the 33-yard line, it's 1st and 10. The option look. And he didn't get the pitch off, and he paid the price. After losing a couple on that last play, here's 2nd and 12. He'll ride his man on the option. He'll toss it. Open space at the 25. And that's what this option will do to you. They got the pitch man free, and he was off to the races. And the Razorbacks trying to pay off the threat on 1st and goal. Use the play fake, now to throw. And the pass is effective, and they tackle him at the 19. Defense rose up deep in its own end on that last play. Now a second and long coming. Quarterback making adjustments with his receivers. They're bringing heat. Nowhere close on that one as he got drilled trying to deliver the football, and now they face third down.
This offensive line is going to have to shore up this pass pro, guys. The last play they took a sack. This one they allow a hit on the QB, which forces the incompletion. Third down, you're going to be throwing it right here, you think, so O-line's got to step up.
That pass not close as he got drilled trying to deliver it, and it'll bring up fourth down. Looking for a man. It's Green. Looking to the big tight end. Downfield and incomplete. The defense holds.
You know, there are a lot of people watching this game that are thinking to themselves, where's this? You're blowing this team out. Why are you going for it on fourth down? Why not just punt, give it back, and just leave here with a W? That's because this coach wants his guys to keep executing. I played for a coach in college that would have done the same thing. If backups are on the field, they get an opportunity to run your playbook, so let them do it. At the end of the day, you've got to force the opponent to stop. And that's what they're doing. That's the mindset. I got to be honest, I like it.
Wants to throw on second down. Snagged in the middle. It's Wallace. There to make the tackle, but the big throw is good enough to give them a first down. He wants to throw. Takes the easy throw in the flat. Ran through the tackle, and he's got room to run. And they pick up just a few on that completion.
Well, and here's the problem offensively. Because you're trailing by so much so late in the game, the defense now is going to be playing big zone coverages, and they're going to allow you to throw the ball underneath in the middle of the field, rally to make a tackle, and bleed the clock. It's going to be hard now for this offense to claw their way back in this one.
Looking to throw on second down. He's taking a deep shot late in the game. A sensational grab down the field there as they try to at least put a positive spin on the end of this game. And the Nittany Lions getting set on 1st and 10. And that pass intercepted. They didn't give him much of a chance to make that play even bigger, but the turnover has him set up at the 16.
The number one objective for a defense is to make the offense one-dimensional. Well, when they're trailing by this much, late in the game, they're one-dimensional. They have to pass the football. We can bring more speed on the field. You see it. We know you're throwing the football. Nice break on the football. Nice interception. This one's almost over.
And the runner is down, and so is the flag. Holding penalties, the ultimate drive killer. We'll see if it costs this offense here. And here we go. Final play of the game right here. Goes to the option. And that will be the final play as the clock strikes 0 here. All business today for this ball club. They come out and they get the win.
And that's all that matters. It's not always pretty. You don't always do everything you want to do or check all the boxes. But at the end of the game, Jesse, you want that W.
No doubt about it. They made the plays they needed to make in order to get this win. I thought the quarterback showed tremendous poise, good leadership throughout the course of the game. Defense made stops when they had to make them. So, right, there were some things they're going to need to clean up moving forward, but ultimately they were the better team today.
So that's going to do it for us. For Jesse Palmer, David Pollack, I'm Reese Davis saying so long. This has been another presentation of EA Sports College Football.